Today, we're going to dig into the incredible life of Louis Leakey. He was this amazing mix of showman and scientist, and he was absolutely convinced that he knew a secret about where we all come from, a secret the rest of the world was totally missing. He believed our whole story started in a place that, well, nobody else was even looking.
It's really the biggest question of them all, isn't it? Where do we come from? For centuries, that single question has fueled explorers, scientists, you name it. And back in the early 20th century, the scientific community really thought they were getting close to an answer.
So, the thinking at the time, the prevailing wisdom, was that our story began somewhere in Eurasia. I mean, it made sense, right? That's where fossils had been found, and the big important universities and museums were all in Europe. All eyes were pointed in one direction.
But there was this one guy who argued, against pretty much everyone, that the real cradle of humanity wasn't in Europe or Asia at all. He said it was in Africa. His name was Louis Leakey, and it was such a radical idea. And to really get why he was so sure of himself, you have to understand where he came from.
You see, Leakey's conviction didn't come from some stuffy laboratory or a university library. Nope, it came from the land itself. It came from a childhood that was just completely different from any of his academic peers.
I mean, think about it. The standard path for a brilliant young British man back then led straight to Cambridge and some traditional career. But Leakey's path? It was something else entirely. As the son of missionaries in Kenya, he actually grew up speaking the Kikuyu language first, and he was even initiated into the tribe. He didn't just study Africa from a distance. He understood it from the inside out.
And then he arrives here, Cambridge University. Can you just imagine the culture shock? He went from the wide-open plains of Kenya to this incredibly rigid, formal world of British academia. He was an outsider from the moment he walked in, but as it turns out, he knew exactly how to use that to his advantage.
And this one story just tells you everything you need to know about his personality. So he needs to fulfill a language requirement, and he proposes Kikuyu. Of course, no one at Cambridge could possibly test him on it. So he arranges for a Kikuyu chief to certify his fluency with a thumbprint. He was already bending the rules of the establishment to fit his own unique view of the world.
So armed with a Cambridge degree and his absolutely unparalleled knowledge of East Africa, Leakey sets out to prove his radical theory. And he knew exactly where he wanted to look.
This place is Olduvai Gorge. For Leakey, this wasn't just some random spot on a map. It was a place where millions of years of history were literally exposed, layer by layer, right there on the canyon walls. He was totally convinced the answers to our deepest questions were buried right here.
And he proved it with his typical showmanship. A German professor named Hans Reck had found a modern-looking skeleton at Olduvai years before, but was skeptical about its age. Leakey, just brimming with confidence, bets Reck that he can find ancient stone tools on the site within a single day. And of course, he won the bet. Easy. It just proved he could read that landscape like nobody else.
But that supreme confidence and his total disregard for convention would soon lead to his downfall. In the mid-1930s, his personal and professional worlds collided, and everything, and I mean everything, fell apart.
And the collapse was shockingly fast. An affair with his illustrator, Mary Nicole, created a massive scandal. Then, his key fossil sites were discredited because the location markers mysteriously vanished, and a rival publicly destroyed his credibility. In just a few years, he was divorced, academically disgraced, and completely broke. His fall from grace was absolute. He and Mary were forced to live here, in this place called Steen Cottage, in just abject poverty for 18 long months. They had to fetch their water from a well and wrote by the light of an oil lantern. The world's leading proponent of an African origin for humanity was now a total outcast, literally gardening just to survive.
So for years, Louis and Mary Leakey just toiled away in obscurity, scraping by on tiny grants and their sheer unshakable belief in the importance of Olduvai Gorge. And then, in 1959, their persistence paid off in the most dramatic way you can possibly imagine.
They went back to Olduvai, the one place that held all their hopes. And one day in 1959, while Louis was sick in the tent with the fever, Mary went out digging on her own, and she made a discovery that would change absolutely everything.
She found this, the skull of Zinjanthropus, which they nicknamed Zinj or Nutcracker Man. It was an early hominid, a really distant relative on our family tree. But the most stunning thing about Zinj wasn't just that it existed, it was its age.
1.75 million years old.
That single number was a bombshell. It pushed back the known timeline of hominids in Africa by over 1 million years. This discovery made headlines all over the world, and suddenly, Louis Leakey wasn't a crackpot anymore. He was a visionary.
The funding, especially from the National Geographic Society, just started pouring in. And soon after that, their team unearthed another, even more significant fossil, Homo habilis, or handyman, named because it was found with stone tools. Leakey had finally found the proof he had been searching for his entire life.
Now, the discoveries at Olduvai totally secured Leakey's place in history, but his impact reached so much further than just a few famous fossils. He fundamentally reshaped how we understand our own deep past.
I mean, his legacy is just immense. He proved his central theory that humanity was born in Africa. He pioneered primatology by sponsoring Jane Goodall, Dian Fossey, and Birude Galdicus, the famous Trimates. He built research institutions in Africa, played a complicated but important role in Kenya's path to independence, and inspired his own kids to become world-class scientists.
In the end, Leakey leaves us with this really powerful thought. He believed our greatest strength, our brain, could also be our downfall. For him, looking back millions of years wasn't just some academic exercise, it was a vital lesson for our own survival. And it leaves us with a pretty profound question. By understanding where we came from, can we truly control where we're going?